the beginning of 2020, the sudden attack of the new coronavirus brought in the global pandemic. So in the past, thousands of years, human civilization has experienced large and small pandemics. For example, you have the plague, the flu, cholera, malaria. So these pandemics have profoundly affected our technological, social, political, literary, and artistic development. And throughout human history, art has not only recorded these historical events, but also has helped people to overcome fears and express compassion at the same time, and also give hope to those who had suffered. In my view, art not only plays the role of documentation in dark periods like this, but also allows us to come to terms with the struggle between, life and death, and to bring consolation and hope. Through artistic narratives, people during the pandemic could face challenging times with the understanding of history. Within the development of technology, art can potentially react to the pandemic in more effective and engaging ways. So during COVID-related lockdowns and other restrictions, live performances around the world, around the world, not only in Cebu, were not allowed. Most people experience isolation and emotional stress due to the quarantine and social distancing. So thanks to the development of the internet, online performance had become a substitute for in-theater performance during the pandemic. One could search for various performances on the internet without the limitation of one's location. So performers could actually perform at their own homes via conference calls, video conference calls, and potentially reach a wider audience. So actors and directors began to explore new methods in the creative process, combining different spaces and times, such that, time and space could be reconfigured in non-traditional ways and meet the needs of a wide range situations. To sustain a presence during the pandemic, different theaters and performing groups actually have carried out performances via internet or the digital media, and this way of presentation has become what you call the new norm. Hopefully we are already post-pandemic, although a lot of people will argue that we're not there yet.
The 2020 COVID-19 pandemic severely affected the artist and creative industries. It undoubtedly has had a profound impact on the entire art industry. Whether it is creation and production or distribution and consumption, many aspects of the industry have undergone new challenges, which led to new changes and new developments. But nevertheless, virtual events and streaming performances brought by the pandemic also provide new opportunities for artistic and cultural participation. The digital platform through the internet offers a global audience a new virtual art world. Dimensions of different time and space have further stimulated artists with further innovation and broader exploration. A revolution in the performing arts is ongoing since COVID-19 pandemic, and the artists are bravely and actively exploring new forms of artistic expression in this new situation, which is the pandemic.
Hi, I'm Emmanuel Jones Mante. I'm a theater director, theater actor, a playwright, and an educator as well. So I'm going to talk about a theater laboratory for students in the University of Cebu. It started with the Senior High Arts and Design, and now we're extending it to the Bachelor of Performing Arts. So that inspiration came from Dulaang Laboratoryo from Dulaang UP. So I thought that, because by the end of the year, students in UP would feature or would stage their theses, their performance theses before they graduate. And I have to say that they were all stellars, and I thought they were excellently crafted. And imagine work of a student, and then if I compare it with the other productions that I've seen where I paid a certain amount for a ticket, I thought the thesis, it was for free, and yet it was far from the other performances that I've seen, in the semi-professional aspect. So then I told Sir Rudy Aviles, who is our beloved cultural director, Sir Rudy, I'm gonna do a theater lab, and then he helped me coin the concept. So let's do lab teatro for that, so that the meaning becomes multi-level. Our love for the theater, lab teatro. So that's why we had it launched 2019 before the pandemic. So we had 4 one-act plays and 2 dance musicals with our grade 11 and grade 12 Bachelor of Performing Arts. And then we also had Panagtipon, which we also extended it in Panagtipon when we had Kasal sa Dugo, which is an adaptation of Federico Garcia Lorca's The Blood Wedding. So up to now, Lab Teatro is still there. So it's our platform. We feature the works of our students where they get to explore their craft, not only in terms of directing and acting, but there's also production management and stage management. And also we train them how to market the plays. So I had I had other theater artists that I tapped, and then I told them, we can do a workshop online. So first we did Viewpoints workshop. So first we had Viewpoints. So Viewpoints is a book that was written by Anne Bogart and Tina Landau, and it's basically a philosophy translated into a technique for training performers, ensemble building, and at the same time creating movement for the stage. So may itag movement for the stage, that also includes spatial relationship and architecture. Architecture is how to utilize the space. But the challenge was, how do you create viewpoints from the traditional staging to the online platform? And this is where Zoom comes in. So highlight lang sa Viewpoints, we make sure that in Viewpoints, the shape of the actors, they contribute to the storytelling part by observing the shapes and the lines of the body. Like, for example, if you do this kind of shape, well, you can see that this must be this expresses a certain person and character. So look at the lines, they're all straight. And then when you curve like this, straight curve. So that the language of the body language, in a way, also expresses a particular thought besides the text and the dialogue. So in architecture, like for example, I want to put emphasis on my character, because on stage you can put emphasis on a particular character through the blockings. You can put the character at the center, or you can put him on a level stage. But in in Zoom, in viewpoints in Zoom, it's just like you have your laptop with you, and then you are so angry. For example, like you want to say, I hate you to this person, you would go, I hate you. Then that already is a language of architecture and spatial relationship. But if you're so disgusted with the person, you can just go, I hate you. And that is also another form of expression. So we had to explore them, and at the same time, we have to utilize the space. Like another example also is like, how would you like to introduce your character? So like, for example, the character is timid and shy. So this is the Zoom box, and then you'd crawl from the bottom, and you would go like, hello, and then you're gonna hide again. Hello. So that is also another form of expression in terms of space. Or you could go to the other side, like, hello. So I thought that was very interesting at first. And probably the reason why it was so interesting because it was so new to me. And knowing my personality, I easily get bored when things become performative. But this was like a new animal I had to deal with, a new animal that I had to study. And at the same time, how to teach it to my students that they can also apply it into their own creative process. And I thought that really helped a lot in terms of streaming the performance. And then at the same time, besides creating the shape, the lines, the curve, the spatial relationship, and of course, acknowledging the new topography on Zoom, because in the traditional staging, you only have 3 dimensions. So you get to observe what's upstage, center stage, and downstage. But in Zoom, it can go 4-dimensional. Like, for example, I would tell my actors, okay, after 5 years, nakita mo, and then you're so excited to see each other. And then how would you project that while making it look so romanticized? So what we did in the Zoom is like, for example, there are 2 characters. So they would go like that, and they would turn around. Magtutuyok na sila. And on camera, on Zoom, it would appear nga mura sila, they're playing around like doing a merry-go-round. And that suggests like, karon pa ni sila nagkita after so many years. So in terms of, although it's a different paradigm, but I wouldn't say that creativity was limited. There are like so many things that you can do on Zoom. So kani, suryaan sa nako ang audience sa Zoom, no? It's also different because you don't get to hear the audience. Sa live, you get to hear them applause, you get to hear them laugh, they react organically. But these audience in Zoom, they would make noise on the chat box. You get to see how many viewers you have, that's the good thing also on the online performance. You get to be your own stage manager at the same time, if okay, stage manager, because you make sure that the props are plotted, and because in the process of rehearsals, you create a muscle memory, like, this is where I'm going to grab my tie, this is where I'm going to change costume. But the challenge there is you have to make sure that your camera is turned off, otherwise you'll be changing in front of a live audience. So make sure naka-shut yun ang camera. The second workshop we had with Missy Maramara after Viewpoints, this was a month after, we had Meisner. So Meisner is like how the expressions become detailed, they become so organic without overthinking. Because, actors, especially like the new ones, they tend to overthink. And when they overthink, you can see in their performance that it has a lot of artifice or kanang dili siya organic. But in Viewpoints, it's repetition is also observed. And I thought the micro expressions were captured in Meisner. It's often misunderstood as a method acting, but it's not method acting. And then ang playwriting with drama and performance, si Ma'am Linda Faigao, I thought that also helped a lot. The good thing about playwriting is that after you send your comments to your students, they can work on their own and then submit, revise, submit until they come up with a piece that's ready to be streamed online. The good thing about the personal narratives is that it becomes an ethnographic study for the students and what they were and who might they become. And there is this what you call full authorship without following a conventional structure like Aristotelian structure. So it can go anti-narrative. So as long as the storytelling of the movements, the images are there, and then they become coherent, and that's it. No, so it's also, I'd say it's part of experimental theater, and teaching them semiotics was also very important, most especially in terms of transmitting that knowledge to images. So that was very useful also in the online process. And it was recorded. It wasn't live, but it was recorded. Because I think it has to be recorded because there are things to consider like sound design, lighting. So I thought that it would be seamless if it was recorded. And some of them had to shoot in their backyards, in their rooftop. So that's what makes it so interesting because, these students probably had the chance to, in a way, explore their community. So I'm going to share the processes we had in the Young Thespians of Cebu because every summer I also did a lot of workshops. We gave students a simple guideline for recording. So when we did musical theater, we didn't do it live. It was more of recorded. So first was the students had to prepare 2 devices, 1 laptop and 1 cell phone. And then they have to practice the recording. So once their notes when they sing becomes seamless, then they submit it to our musical director, and then the musical director would clean the recording. And after the musical director cleans the recording, their audio recording, they will return it to the participant. And then the participant would shoot a video, but they have to do lip sync using that recorded performance that they did. So therefore, there's a separation of recording from the audio and the video. So I think this is very important because it's musical theater. And I think that musical theater really demands a lot of high-end quality in terms of technicality. And after they record on camera, then they also have to think about their outfits. They consult me and their background. And of course, the background has to relate also to the piece that they're doing, to the song that they're doing. And then after that, ang pinaka-challenging yun is ang doing the ensemble work. Because besides the outfit and the background, we also had to choreograph them. Like the musical theater we did, The World Will Know. So dapat they should look synchronized. So, but then again, the choreography is only up to here until the head down, the bust. So, but more of hand gestures on choreography and a little bit of turning, a little bit of, going forward to the camera or going against the camera or going away from the camera. So those things are also explored during choreography. And then we put them together, the mise en scène, the arrangement of putting these segmental performances, and then they come up with a concert. Doing playwriting online was not difficult. I thought it was easy. I never thought about the audience. They were the least that I could think of. The most important thing when we did online in the pandemic was we we still want to continue doing theater because we thought that our souls would die if we're not doing it. So whoever is watching us, please come watch from whatever, category you belong. We don't care. But the good thing lang sad yun sa mga streaming, like especially if you stream it on Facebook, like anyone can review it. No? Anyone can review it. It's no longer ephemeral. Unlike in theater, it's ephemeral. But in you can review it. No? And I thought millennials and Gen Zs were really into it. No, they were really watching a lot of Zoom performances and other, streaming platforms. But, people like Sir Rudy, Sir Orlan Magno, I don't think they really liked it. I thought they were really close-minded about. But I also think that doing theater on Zoom is just a substitute. But it can never replace the live performance. No. As a teacher, I'm always challenged because I also think about my students. Like, how will they, apply this in their craft? But at the same time, it's going to transition back to the face-to-face. So, honestly, I didn't have any answer to that. So I just let the process teach us. And then they get to discover it themselves, like from the online to the face-to-face. So what were the, sa may kalahian, what's the difference, and what have you discovered in the face-to-face, which you've never discovered online. And I didn't have to answer that for them. They had to. It becomes an inner journey for them. Like, and after that online, I thought I saw a lot of students get to love and appreciate the theater more after experiencing the online. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Derek Brian S. Salazar. I am 19 years old and I'm currently a first-year student at the Bachelor of Performing Arts. I go to performances like once a year or once in 2 years. And everything that I watch were all Broadway musicals, Tarzan and Jesus Christ Superstar. Yeah. My first theater experience was done online. We were exploring our spaces. Now at that time, I had no idea what the point was. Sir Eman had us explore our spaces and do weird things with our arms. It was to explore the box of Zoom. So I didn't really enjoy that. And there's the lag of the internet too. And so I was thinking, did I enroll at the right school? Like, is this really theater? What's the point of this? When we were done with the workshop phase, that's when I started enjoying things. Like, we had this thing called scene studies, and Sir Eman would give us a soft copy of the script. And with that script, we have to memorize that in a week, and by that time, we would perform it live. And so we started out with Midsummer Night's Dream, then it was a Cebuano play of Fret, then Bugti, then Venus de Molo, and then our last performance was a one-act play of New Yorker in Tondo. After New Yorker in Tondo, Sir Eman invited me on Theater Space under Miss Ana Valdez Lim, and I did Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare, and I think that was the combination of enjoyment and pressure, because the pressure is coming from the fact that I'm under the director of Miss Ana Valdez Lim. That's a pretty big name, and my co-actors are people who I've never worked with or who I've never encountered in real life. They're from Manila, and I felt the most out of place. Basically, I just felt the most out of place. But once we've established our friendship, I think the enjoyment of theater, I think it came back. Like how I enjoyed New Yorker in Tondo came back in Merchant of Venice. I think the highlight of them all are like the bond you create with people despite the distance. I think that's what makes it very beautiful. I think that's what makes online theater beautiful. It connects people across different regions of the country, and then we just talk and talk for hours.
Okay, so I am Nico Noblaza, a first-year Bachelor of Performing Arts student from the University of Cebu. My first actual face-to-face performance that I saw was at SM from Springdale, which was called Curtain Call, and that kind of sparked an interest within me and my classmates from junior high. So we decided to have, because of that, we decided to have our own final project of a sort of jukebox musical. It's basically the same as musicals, but the songs are not originally made for that performance. They are pre-existing songs like pop songs or other existing songs, which some of the lyrics may be changed to fit into the story that the performers are trying to tell. Before the pandemic, I already have this kind of preconceived notion on how theater would be like as an audience. And aside from Curtain Call from Springdale, I also saw Immaculate Heart of Mary's own rendition of Les Miserables. During the pandemic, that was also when I enrolled into the Arts and Design program in the University of Cebu. And that was honestly a culture shock because I came into the program without expecting anything, without knowing where it would lead me. Especially that the medium was online and Zoom. So we had workshops which were conducted under Sir Emmanuel Mante. And it was very different because the first virtual performance that I saw was of Lab Teatro, which I saw their adaptation of Facing Death, and comparing it to what I saw face-to-face versus what I saw virtually, the way they used the medium was, I would say it was very creative in expressing the story and the themes of the play. It kind of broke expectations in the sense that you wouldn't expect them to use Zoom or the limited space they have. And I believe it was challenging for the actors, especially in our country, which does not have a very fast internet connection. So, nevertheless, I would say I was amazed with how they used the platform in making sure that the stories or the theme that was explored in the stories stayed the same, either if it was face-to-face or online. So I'd say that their performance was very effective in conveying those themes and emotions. The major difference between face-to-face and online performance was that there's a difference in its suspension of disbelief, because as a physical audience, the venue or the space where the performance is performed is already a performance within itself. It kind of puts me personally, especially when the lights start to dim and the chimes begin to play before the performance starts, it kind of transports us to the world that the performers are in. Meanwhile, in online, you only are limited to where you are, whether you're at home, whether you're at work or school, or whatever space you're using to watch the performance. You're there, but the performers can't really manipulate the surroundings you are in because they're, again, limited to their spaces online. So I guess there's a difference in that.
Hi, I'm Leia Jean Cabrera. When I moved here in the city, I only had like a few months to enjoy it because then COVID happened. So I only went to a play in our school once. But before that, of course, I have seen a few concerts. So I could say I've seen concerts and performances about one to two times a year. Not that often, but actually gave way to a lot of opportunities for me to be able to see them or see performances more, because then they offered online viewing. So, and those were actually cheaper than live ones. So I actually got so interested, and I've seen lots of theaters after that. And also because of COVID, it seemed like they provided more free viewing since then. So I would always try to get the chance to see those performances because I actually now enjoy it very much. I've watched lots of musicals and operas as well. And of course concerts because I'm an avid fan of some bands. So I would always try to at least see them. I would also ask some of my friends to guys, how about we, because if it's online, you only get to it's cheaper because then you get to have one account and a lot of people can pay for that one account and you can share it, you can watch it all together. So that was a cheaper way and a more actually made me got into it. It has welcomed me and I felt like I was part of it now because I finally got to see them live per se, but not really live, it's still on the screen. So that's also the downfall to it.
I am Kyle Ann Blanco. I actually watch both musicals and stage plays, or straight plays, as I would call it as well. And my experiences with theater pre-pandemic is that I was able to watch 3 shows, if I remember right. First one was Sound of Music in CIC Cebu. It was done by the school itself. Second one is Phantom of the Opera in Manila. And then I think the last one before the pandemic actually hit was Adam's Family, and it was held in SM Cebu, if I remember right. And then during the pandemic, actually, I also watched quite a number of musicals, because I actually love Japanese musicals, and I also have experience of having actually ordered streaming, so I could watch them while being delivered online. And aside from Japanese titles, these include Prince of Tennis, the musical of the Prince of Tennis, and then I also watch my favorite musical. One of my favorites is Endless Shock, which has been going on actually from 2000. So it has been running for 23 years. And then, what else? A lot of musicals. I'm also familiar with Takarazuka, etc., etc.
So, hello, my name is Jose Antonio Dasig. I would go to Cenaculo with my parents. At first, I didn't really want to go there, so I was just forced to. But as time went by, I learned to enjoy it. Especially when you get to be there with other people, you get to see their expressions and how they react to the Passion of Christ. And it was very, how do I say this? It was a very surreal experience for me as a kid. I think I was 10 at the time when I first went there. I even remember that blood would spray on me sometimes, and I didn't really mind it at the time because I thought that was part of the experience, and it made me appreciate it more as when I look back to it in hindsight.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Castle. You can call me Eman. During my tenure in UC's Arts and Design department, we were actually immersed in a whole bunch of experiences that helped us not only engage in a more semi-professional environment, but also enrich our awareness and information that we already had about the performing arts. Because before that, I only thought the performing arts was limited to singing, the concerts, composing music, acting, and dancing. But the sooner that we found out that there were so many things that were needed in order to create a performance, it made me appreciate as the backstage people, as well as my colleagues and I had to come up with ways to impress, and not only impress our professor, because our professor was came from a prestigious organization, a very prestigious school, UP-Diliman, but also inherit the vision, which is what arts and design represents, to bring the art to the masses. And that's what we accomplished with Panagtipon 2020, where we were part of a large ensemble of plays that We showed to the audience for a very cheap price, and it was very worth it. It was very tiring, and a lot of the time, you often think to yourself, if you're in the production business, it's very tiring. It's very, let's just say, it requires a lot of spirit. It requires a lot of emotion out of you, because you're not living as yourself. You're living in a time that didn't exist yet, or that hasn't existed before you took the first action, before you took the first word, before any of the words have been written for you to speak out. And we somehow exist in that ephemeral plane where the audience's imagination are our existence. And we are completed by the audience's imagination.
So hello, I am Martha Antoinette and Emmy, or you can call me Thea. And to start, I really didn't expect to be part of this art form. My experience started very rough. We were given a production to do, and we were tasked to stage it on a big stage like Cebu Coliseum. And I was appointed to be the director, so it was very it was a very hard task to do. But after it all happened and the pandemic hit, it also hit me that I missed the experience. I missed the bond that I made with these people. I met different people. I met people with different from different backgrounds of life, different ages. There were those who were younger than me. They were into theater earlier than me, and those who were older, more wiser. And I learned a lot. And slowly, even during the pandemic, I came to realize and appreciate just how theater made me feel alive. It made me it kind of forced me to be with people, to talk with people, to socialize. But in a way, I think theater helped me. It helped me not just socially, but also mentally, emotionally. I was able through this art form. I was able to let go of these emotions that I couldn't through this art form. So for the playwriting class, just thinking about what to write, what message I want to give to people. And fortunately, I had a really talented co-playwright. So, and since we were both part of the LGBTQ community, I suggested that our play would be about this issue about gay people, gay men, and to make it more relatable, we had different age groups. We had one that was younger, more open, more accepting of who he was, compared to his father figure was very closeted, very discriminated. And through that play, I think we were able to. We were even in such a short time, we were able to more give light to the experiences of our fellow LGBTQ community members, and thankfully after that playwriting class, we were tasked to do a online performance, so Lab Teatro, and my classmates were told to translate our English play into Bisaya, so it makes it more relatable, more on theme, and I'm very proud that my co-playwright's play was staged even online, and I actually received a lot of good feedbacks. One gay male friend of mine told me that he cried because it was very relatable. So I think it made me feel like I did my part.
The performing arts is quite huge, and probably it's good to talk about the challenges and the opportunities that were afforded by this phenomena. The audience who goes to the theater are always expecting a physical surrounding of a combination stage effect, and you have lighting, music, performance, costumes, tension. Now, how will new media, or let's say, how will the digital media provide that kind of complete experience when you're online?
I'm Haidee Palapar, and maybe I'd like to share lang two things about what I did in terms of the theater, for during the pandemic, and what I plan to do also with the stories that I was able to gather during the pandemic. Maybe to begin with, I was very involved with the church, particularly my parish during the pandemic, because one of the institutions and I think the traditions that were affected very much because of the pandemic and the lockdown that it brought about was the church. And we were a few of those people who really took a risk in going to the church. We really went out of our homes and passed through all these how do you call this barricades, this checkpoints, just so we could go to church. So we were a few of those who remained in church, the church workers that were there during the pandemic. But we felt that it was needed. We had a mission, we call it a mission. We felt that we had this mission to really bring about the hope that you find in one's faith, the hope that you can find in the consistency before the pandemic, the consistency that the church gave. We felt that there was also the need to give people that something to cling to in a time when there was hopelessness, there was desperation. And so that was one of the reasons why we were pushed to go beyond what was expected of us. We were volunteers actually, and but we went out of our houses and just felt that we had to do this mission. And so when the pandemic hit, the lockdowns actually came about. That was around already the time near Lent. That was already Lent. And I think for Catholics, especially practicing Catholics, they know that at the end of Lent is the Holy Week with so many traditions that it brings, or it carries. So it was challenging for us at first, because even at the start we had to set up what we call the virtual or online masses. That in itself was very challenging for a lot of churches or parishes. For us, thankfully, it became part of this, how you call this, in the church, we call this the Committee on Social Communications. And we do just about everything, actually, from the plays that are staged in the churches, in the publications there, in so many things. So we were involved in that, and we were already, in my parish, we were already gathered and we were already formed. So in a sense, for us at the parish where I belong, that's the Our Lady of the Sacred Heart Parish in Capitol, that was easy for us to do the shifting from the usual masses, which was face-to-face, physical, and then shifting to the online or the virtual. But we were able to set up quick. One of the first, actually, parishes that were able to set up an online. And so it was also kind of quick for us to also shift our, how do you call this, our thoughts, to coming up with plays like the Sugat and even the Stations of the Cross online, because we were already a little bit oriented towards the virtual or online. It was quite easy for us. So, but actually in 2020, when the first year of the pandemic, we couldn't right away do the plays online, where you actually see them really act out online. So what we did initially was I had to tweak a bit my sugat play to sort of like a radio play, audio, because I could not get enough characters, not even the youth then, to come out of their houses and come to the church. That was, I think, at the height of the pandemic. So there were a few of us, and we just had to, some of my how do you call this, fellow volunteers had to shift, change voices sometimes, and take on more than one role. But we had to do that because we felt, like I said, people expected that. That was like, it's the new normal, but how do you bring the normal? So it was normal that we had the sugat, we had the Stations of the Cross. So we had to push this, even if it's not in the physical or the usual way, traditional form, but we had to do it online. So we used the audio. We had to think, I had to think of the radio plays so that I can tweak a bit the script, and at the same time guide my fellow volunteers who really took on the roles to become actors right away. So in a sense, it was a community theater, a little bit, because it was audio, but a little bit of community theater involved. One of the challenges is that I was working with volunteers or people who were not oriented to the theater. But these are people who seem to have an innate sense of what to do, which I believe is quite something that people should be, that the people in the theater should be tapping. Because if you think about it, theater is really practical. It's about practicality. One moves with the space given, and you make use of that space, and you act out or you move in the way that people move in real life as much as possible. So, and you are actually writing about people in real life, even if you say that you're writing about characters in the Bible or the things that you hear only in the gospel or in the masses. And yet these are real people, or these were people. So you think of how you use your imagination. How would they act if given this kind of situation? So it's very practical, actually. Although I am more of a playwright than a director, when I do the directing, I have this I don't follow any method at all. I just want things to be practical, probably because the people who are watching the plays that I do, especially if they're church related, these are people who come from real life. They're people who we try to reach out in the, how do you call this, in Cebuano, pinakahilit nga mga lugar sa amuang parokya. In our parish, most of the people there are not only urban poor, but we have also transients, people who just come here because they're looking for greener pastures. So these are diverse audiences that we have to deal with. So that's what we did. In 2022, because there were looser restrictions now, we were able to bring in the young. So what we did, because we still could, there were still no physical masses, we still could not hold the usual place wherein, usually when we have sugat plays, we really create a stage or produce a stage in front of the church and really get people from the community to come and see us. Even in our Stations of the Cross, it was live. We call it the living tableau because we bring to life the different Stations of the Cross, the passion of Jesus Christ, until his death, until he was buried. And we would go out in the streets, really very community theater-like. Go out into we walk the long stretch of Escario Street and pause in certain areas where we can act out a certain station. And that's what was the usual before the pandemic. Now we had to, how do we change this idea now and create something for online? So, but the youth, because I believe that the young people are more flexible than probably people my age, so they were really able to how do you call this, step up. They nag-level up yun na sila. And then I was kind of proud of them. They're not, again, trained people, but they just follow what you ask them, and they come during rehearsals, and we were able to do that. And what I love also about working with the youth is that they're really very techy. In fact, I just tell them, this is usually the scene that I want with the background, because we could not do that. There was no like hardwares that were open at the time. We could not set up a stage or even backdrops. No, so what they did was that they edited online, no, the scenes at the back. So we just set up a green screen. In my time, there was no such thing as a green screen. Someone on green screen, no. So I let them do that. And then they just asked me for direction, and they asked me to review and wait for my go signal, and that's it. They were able to do that. So it was really, for me, community at work, the community at its best. No, they know the risk involved of going out of their homes and coming to church, but they know also the bigger picture, which is the traditions have to go on, because these are the things that people hold on to, cling to, in a time when everything was fluid, everything was, it was really a different time for everyone. So in 2022, we were able to hold that. But thankfully in 2023, we were back to the traditional. But one of the things that I learned actually from the experience is that when I tweaked my script of the sugat, or even my guide for the tableau of the stations, living tableau of the Stations of the Cross, I had to now sort of utilize what I learned from for writing for screens, for film. I had to tweak a little bit from playwriting to screenwriting, writing for film. Because the luxury that we had was we had time to edit, compared to what the others were, the kind of theater that they were utilizing at the time of the pandemic, is that they had to do it also live. They had to perform live. I was part of the group that critic Emmanuel Mante's, was it titled QPAS, I think. It was like a first reading that we did of the script. And I understand that what he did was you had two characters, and they had a Zoom set up, and then, of course, they were not in one place, but they did Zoom. And so I can just imagine the difficulty of translating a script just with your Zoom, your face there, close up in Zoom. So there are the challenges to that. But that's live. You have to do it ASAP, and therefore the practices are also done in Zoom. But I had that luxury actually because of the people coming to the church, and we were able to practice and then record the different scenes, and we can even do cuts. We can do ask them actually to act again, if there are things that we want, certain angles that we wanted. So I had that luxury of doing that for the church during the time of the pandemic. So different ways of doing theater at that time. Mine, I just decided to sort of come up with something that was the merging of play and the screen. One of the challenges actually from this kind of setup is that in play you get the raw reaction of an audience, but for us, like the screen, like in screenplays or like in films, we have to wait for the reactions to come in quite later. But we were happy that a lot of people appreciated also what we did. Even the kids waited. They really waited for Friday afternoons for our storytellings and play acting of the lives of saints, or the passages that we wanted to focus for catechism. So that was quite a different experience, though, of course. But from my end, I'm just very thankful that we were able to do that, but I'm more thankful now that we are back to doing things in the traditional way.
It's different to see them live, of course, because you would hear them, you would feel the atmosphere and the place in the theater. It's different because you don't feel the vibes, because like it's different from the live ones that I've attended concerts. You would feel the sweat. You feel the energy coming out of you. But if it's on the screen, it's like you're just watching on the screen and you're smiling by yourself, and you can't really feel everybody else. It's like you still have to chat your friends, like, guys, are you seeing this? Do you feel this? And like you don't see them right away, and you can't scream as well. Like you can't cheer for them or appreciate them better because you hear them live, because it feels like it feels fake that you see them on the screen, that you don't see them in reality.
The lag is my mortal enemy. Disadvantage of online theater. And then how you do sound checks is so different in online, because instead of doing it sound check face to face, going around the stage, you go around your microphone. You explore the distance between you and your microphone, and the director will tell you, okay, your audio is good. And then there's also the camera. You go further or nearer the camera. There's also this timing with the backgrounds. And I think that's the one thing that's very difficult to pull off, because, for example, in the face-to-face setting, it would be a set change. But for Zoom, it would be a background change.
When the sun goes down, you're gonna need a flashlight. You're gonna need a candle.
I think I can manage that.
When you leave town, I'm gonna buy you a calling card. 'Cause I am falling hard for you.
I go back on Labor Day.
And I will try to make my way
out west to California.
So we've got the summer,
and we've got each other, perhaps even longer.
When you're on your own, and suddenly without me, but you forget about me.
I couldn't if I tried.
When I'm all alone, and I close my eyes, that's when I'll see your face again. When you're gone, you know that I'll be waiting. When you're gone,
That you're here with me
we'll be
right
working hard. But if we should drift apart,
now.
let me take this moment just to say, you are gonna change the world someday.
I'll think of you every night at the same time.
When the sun goes down,
When the sun goes down,
the sun goes down.
The challenge of doing a background change is focusing on the camera while touching your keyboard to manipulate your background. I think that was the most difficult part, and also trying to mute your microphone, and then you have to touch your keyboard without looking at your keyboard, or trying to turn off your camera on timing, especially if you're a character who's doing a monologue and you have to shut off your camera and you have to click it without looking at it. I think that's the difficult parts of online theater. And of course, the environment. I think, like, I have a dog, and I have to ensure that he's inside once I step into rehearsals or once I'm performing, and then my neighbors also. Like, I have to schedule, okay, at this hour, no karaoke. Yeah.
Me as an audience, during face-to-face, experience the performance with other people, and it creates this kind of united experience or shared experience between us. While online, you are an individual, you are one-on-one with the performance, so it kind of isolates you from that shared experience with other audience members. It kind of removes that sort of joy after watching a performance of sharing your thoughts or insights or having that sense of community as an audience. It was very challenging because when I began under the mentorship of Sir Eman, we were tasked for our finals during grade 11 to make an autobiographical performance, and it was inspired by our own personal narratives. So with my group, we shared our own experiences. And I think the common thread that we shared was that it was our experiences during the pandemic, because it was a very tough time for all of us. So that enabled us to have a connection and make this performance not only meaningful to us and to the people we're sharing it with, but also a sense of therapy. It kind of was therapeutic because we were able to express our anguish, our sadness during the depressive time that was the pandemic, because of the certain limitations we had with communicating with people and family members, and even the death of relatives. So it was challenging, but it was cathartic, and it was a stepping stone into live performances, because while we had those online performances and the medium was different, the principles stayed the same, and I'm amazed and grateful for how those principles were translated online, and how when we went into face-to-face, we could still connect these physical principles into what we learned online. So we were able to sort of merge our learned experiences online into our new experiences face-to-face. You can identify which are the leads online and face-to-face, because online, the space is shared among all actors, but that's where that's a challenge that they have to face, and that's where their knowledge in viewpoints comes into play, wherein if this is their particular scene, they get closer to the camera or farther, so they are playing with the angles or their spatial relationship with the camera to signify a particular scene or character, while face-to-face, a lot of elements come into play, such as their costumes. Online, I don't think we could fully see and appreciate the costumes, while face-to-face, we could see from their costumes, their movements, from the color of their costumes, and how this relates to their characters. So in that way, I think that face-to-face, in order to differentiate characters, they tend to be more bold, they tend to be bigger in movement, while I guess that's a similarity as well, because online, it also relies on gestures, but it relies also heavily on the actors' facial expressions and their relationship with the camera.
But during the pandemic, it kind of shut down everything that we knew, and it forced us to find ways to adapt and to overcome this challenge, because how could we bring theater to the masses if the main contact point, the main locus of that contact is gone? So, without the existence of a stage, what was the next best thing? How could we stay connected? And there it was, social media. And we got the idea to stage plays online through Zoom, through Google Meet, through Messenger, whatever spaces, online spaces that we can find. And it was really the intrinsic quality of adapting to the new world, where the physical cannot be separated from safety. It required a lot of trial and error. It required us to bear our emotions in front of people that aren't really there. So how could you make that connection? Of course, technology helped, but also the additional lessons that we had to go through. Like, for example, we had workshops, acting workshops, voice and diction. We had acting exercises, scene studies, and all of these experiences were culminated in our grade 12 year, which was in the middle of the pandemic, which was in early 2021, where we had to write plays, we had to perform them, and it also brought a sense of satisfaction to us because that was the fruit of our labor. We were given the tools, the theories, the lessons, and we emerged with a product that we could be proud of. But then the pandemic was really hard on us emotionally, and it made it hard to act because acting requires you to connect with human beings, and to bring justification to life. You're essentially embodying life. How could you embody life when the people you're supposed to be interacting with are not there? There isn't a sensation that you can cling on. And I think that's something that we proved, that regardless of whether or not you are close or far away from your co-actors or from your prod team or from your from everyone else that you need to establish a connection to, you can always find a way. And I think that was the kind of the light at the end of the tunnel for all of us at UC, at our Arts and Design program.
Me and my co-director, we directed a full-length play called, it's a play by August Strindberg, Facing Death, and we translated it into Bisaya, which is called Nagatubang sa Kamatayon. And we had to, it was in the middle of a pandemic, so we didn't have the chance to meet up, do rehearsals. We had to do everything online. And besides having limited space, some of our co-actors had no data, had no Wi-Fi, had no phones, had no laptops to use. So we had to really adjust. It was very draining to realize we have to think that we have to stage this play online. So it's very different compared to when you go to a physical stage. So me and my co-director had to think virtually. So we thought of doing this in how films would do it. So we started storyboarding some scenes to frame the actors, and then we just tried to make it more simpler so that the focus is more on the actors, because we had, I think, 5 or 6 actors in 1 hour straight play. It was very difficult to direct, very difficult to rehearse. And besides recording, we had to record their scenes. So our actors had to record in their homes. And besides that, we had to edit. So we had to edit hours of clips, and just to make it coherent. And it was very successful. Thankfully, it was a very successful play. And I would like to say thank you to my co-director and my co-actors, and to everyone, my classmates, to those who supported us. Because without the audience, even though we were doing it online, without the audience, I don't think you would call it theater, because I personally think that the audience is what completes the whole performance.
Pre-pandemic, I could see them in person, of course, without having to actually watch the actors and the setting and the stage on a screen. And I could be with them in real time. I could feel the atmosphere of the show. I could feel the presence of the casts. Just sitting seeing actually the setting and the staging and everything was already quite exhilarating. It was exciting to see. But of course, that was something that we kind of took for granted when pandemic hit, because we didn't know that that would actually, be taken from us. And then during the pandemic, we used streaming platforms, YouTube, other services to actually watch those musicals and stage plays. And then what happened was, while it is convenient and we could watch them perhaps at any time, especially those that have been recorded in DVDs and the like, the difference was that it is not, we're not in the same space, we're not watching it in real time. And then, of course, it's interesting to see through the lenses of the cameraman, because it's been edited. It's been, so you can actually get to watch something that has been professionally done, right? Because it's taken with a professional camera compared to your own eyes. But the difference is that, even where you're seated actually affects the experience of the musical. And all in all, both have their advantages and disadvantages, but it's always different seeing musicals in real time and in person. So that's my key takeaway.
During the pandemic, I can definitely say that I learned to enjoy theaters more, especially the recordings, because back then, I don't know if I didn't have the time or I didn't have the interest. So I'm not really sure between the two, because sometimes I would if I would go with friends, but like if I would go there alone, to be honest, I couldn't be I couldn't be forced to go there. So during the pandemic, you're alone, right? You're with your family, but you're in your own individual rooms, and then you have to look for something to entertain yourself. And the things I always used to do when face-to-face was still, or like the pandemic hasn't hit the Philippines yet, I couldn't do it anymore. So I looked for other ways to entertain myself. One of them was watching movies. At first I started with movies, then I found out that, well, I need something new. I don't really want to do the same thing again and again. So I looked to theater. The first one I watched was, it was recommended to me by a friend. It was Hamilton, I think, Broadway theater. When I compare it to my experience with the face-to-face one, the Cenaculo, I can say that it's really different, because one thing, your perspective of the play, when you're doing it online, you have a set point of view of the scene, as opposed to when you're in that place, you're in that theater in person, you can only see one view. You can only see the view from your seat. So I guess that's one of the advantages of recordings as compared to watching it live, because you get to see different perspectives, you get to see different angles of the play as opposed to seeing just your angle. But I guess you can also say that's like a weakness of recordings, because you can't see the different reactions, like subtle reactions you can't catch on camera. So I would say, yeah, they have their ups, they have their downs. So it's all up to preference for whether you would want to watch it live or would you want to watch it through a recording. I would say the biggest impact of having theater being recorded now is it gets to have a wider reach. People who didn't used to enjoy theater like me gets to be acquainted with it and learn to appreciate it, because, well, you don't have to go to the theater itself and you don't have to spend money on it. Well, you have to if you want to get it. You also have to spend money, I guess, if you want to get a recording of it, but it's much cheaper and it's more accessible. You can watch it on your own free time, and then you don't have to make that much of an effort, because I heard theaters were really hard to get into, especially popular ones like Hamilton, the one I mentioned earlier. I think the number one killjoy for the performance is the lag. Like, it's the number one hindrance for the story to be delivered to me as an audience. But without the lag, I would say it's very enjoyable. I remember the first The first performance, the first online performance I watched was The Mousetrap, directed by my mentor, Sir Eman. So I would say they delivered the story well, and they established the set, the mood, the time very well with the utilization of technology. I would say it's very enjoyable. Having it at home definitely allows distraction to come in, and distraction distracts me from the story, distracts me from focusing on the performance, and with all those things combined, I would say they would make a distracted audience. But in the theater, compared to the face-to-face, I could see them personally. I could focus on them on the seat. I could sit comfortably and watch them. But compared at home, I think the only thing that's advantageous at home is that I can lie down while watching the performance, but that's about it. It's just me lying down and watching them performing with the distraction from my parents, from the dogs, from the neighbors, and then there's also the lag.
Sitting at home to watch live theater and movies is a completely different way of consumption, subverting the traditional theater-style viewing experience. Now, for actors, directors, and the audiences, a new situation emerged. Watching the theater by means of watching a film overturns the original direct connections between the actors and the audience, and it breaks the coherence and the traditional centralized stage.
It's a state between a private space and public space, creating a different experience. Now, there is a stage as the center of attention, but this stage is fragmented because each actor or actress performs in their own compartment, like elements like figures and props are sometimes separated. So the audience enjoys the singing through the radio and appreciates the details of the performance. But for the creator, the free combination of different elements provides more space for the imagination and for experimentation and innovation. Now, during the pandemic, there is a new mode of performance that's very common and popular, and this is the live virtual performance. And it has become the closest way for people to witness the performing arts. For instance, we have this sample from Sakdap. They have this song, I Believe.
I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. I believe that somewhere in the darkest night, a candle glows. I believe for everyone who goes astray, someone will come to show the way. I believe, I believe.
At that time, the pandemic was in full swing, and everybody was isolated at home and had experienced anxiety, fear, and uncertainty, and nobody knew what was going to happen next. Now, the cover is quite short, but it not only warmed the hearts of the viewers who were emotionally distressed, but it also sparked inspiration for new ideas.
Hundreds of top artists performed through the internet at their homes, using various non-professional equipment The development of computer and the internet technology has turned the world into a real global village. Now, this is where everyone could live together in the same virtual space.
So later, SACDAP had a 2021 concert that lasted for almost 2 hours. Now, each artist had to do all the work by themselves, and they may record with a professional camera and perform professional post-production, and they may simply record using a mobile phone. They were just there together. So the absence of a real stage meant that there was no gorgeous lighting or stage effects and sound configuration, no physical interactions with the audience. And all of these elements that are traditionally essential to a singer or a band or even a performer in the performance were removed.
As I mentioned earlier, convenience, and then you get to see shows like myself. I've been watching shows that are made in Japan, not just local ones, or those that have been brought into our country. So we're given the opportunity to see something that we don't have to necessarily go to in person, right? Because you have to consider the lodging, the travel expenses, everything, just to watch that show in person. So that brings us closer to their culture as well. We get to know how they perform it, because actually there are differences. How, let's say, Broadway does Hamilton, and then how, let's say, if Japan were to take an adaptation of that, it would be slightly different to cater the interests of their local audience. So there's a difference between how they would actually do things, and that's what makes, again, theater fun, because you'll never get bored. There's always something to look forward to every day. Even watching the same show, if you came and watch it on a different day, it's going to have a different impact on you. And I think that's the thing that I really love about theater, and that's why I can never get enough of it. And during the pandemic, even though I was not able to watch these in person, I still felt close to musicals and theater, and I got to appreciate even more all the hard work of those working not just on stage, but everyone behind the scenes, the production team, and that's why I can never get enough of talking about theater. And I want to relay that to everyone as well watching this, that it's always great to indulge yourself and get involved and see local plays if you can, because they will bring you a world that you've never seen before.
Both have their own pros and cons. And I've also seen some performers who would do both the live and the online at the same time. So they would have live viewers and they would have online viewers as well, which I think is really nice and a very good opportunity for those who can't go abroad, for example, or really just can't leave home. And it's easier too because you don't have to travel. So I think both would be a good thing. So I can't really tell which one would be better. It would depend on the person maybe. But for me, I would really much prefer seeing performances live because I feel it more than on the online where it feels so superficial.
I guess that watching it live has its own certain charm. You get to be with the other audience. You can feel the atmosphere of the play. But in my case, I'm very my life is very hectic. So I think recordings would be better for me. I can watch it at my own pace. I can watch and replay my favorite scenes, and I think at the end of the day, it's all how you enjoy the art.
Face-to-face theater has been and was always the standard, the norm for theater. So I think people, for a span of 2 years of just staying inside the home, I think they would revert back to what they were used to rather than adapt to the online. Yeah.
Face-to-face performances would come back or would rise to popularity again. But I do believe that since the pandemic challenged us and made way for a new medium, I think that medium wouldn't completely disappear, but rather it is a new form that can still be appreciated by a certain audience, because while face-to-face invites many people from around the globe, unfortunately not a lot of people can travel to certain performances. So that's where online performances come into play, wherein it can be accessible to people from around the globe.
When you are placed in a situation wherein you don't have much to work on, you have so many limitations, I think one of the resorts that the people in the theater do is that they have all these, you can still use theater as a tool, as a means, but you have to also be open enough to work with different kinds or media, because the time asks you or demands that you have to also shift, in a sense, your perspectives about certain the way you do theater. But maybe that's also good that we are able to study now, and I think social media or the technology is here to stay. And it's very interesting that if you can study theater merging with technology, we have that already in some sort of form. I've done a play before wherein it was still a stage play, but we used certain clips or certain scenes, and we project it or we play it at the background. So that's in a sense already merging media, a different kind of media to theater. But this is also another kind of combination that you can do, and it's great actually that you can study this, because we don't know anymore what will happen in the future. And when the time comes that again there is that restriction of doing something physical or in the traditional way, we can right away shift now. And it's an interesting study, I believe. What I'd like to do now, because we are done, well, I don't know, maybe the pandemic is already it's still there, but we are now able to do what we used to do before, but the pandemic came. I was able to gather stories. This actually came because of my work also in an NGO. We were able to gather stories from different people who were affected during the pandemic. Not only the victims, or those who really got sick during with COVID, but also the people who were affected at the time. You have the police, for example, the frontliners, and things like that. I was able to gather stories, and I have started to write. I'm just waiting for the right time to stage it. But maybe stories of these people about the pandemic, and I'm thinking of calling it the COVID monologues. Different people who'll just sit down and do a monologue about their experiences. I'm trying to merge different experiences as much as possible, so that they're not, they're not really true to life in a sense that it comes from one person only. But I want to maximize all the experiences, be able to bring, to write down all the experiences that people underwent during the pandemic, because I find it not only that it's a documentation of what we went through. You have the tendency as a people to forget actually right away. I think a lot of people already forgot the difficulty, the challenges that they have gone through during the pandemic. You ask them and it seems like a dream to them, no? You ask them about what happened during the pandemic. But now it seems like it was just something that, they forgot how difficult it was to be in a lockdown. They forgot how stressful that was, that a lot of people, even myself, I could not understand. I felt I was actually just living normally despite that pandemic, but I did not. I was surprised that there were a lot of stress that came with it, and I did not understand that they all came out, and I did not know that I was already feeling them, feeling these difficulties. But people have the tendency to forget, and I want to document it. But at the same time, I just want to also let people feel that, that life is fleeting, and that, it was a difficult time, and it is a time when we are faced with such difficulties. One of the things that you cling to are your family, your friends, and the relationships you have, even with God. And I'd like them to be thankful, be grateful of these things and what they have. And at the same time, I felt too that because of the pandemic, this is an experience that in theater not many people are writing about. I see a lot of creative works coming out in terms of poetry, in terms of stories. But in theater, I don't know why the stories about COVID or about the pandemic has not yet come out. I'm talking of the Cebuano scene. So I'm looking forward to that, and I want to make also a contribution to that because I felt the stories that I was able to hear and gather are very important, are very worthwhile, and are valuable.
In addition, the actors themselves can watch the performance very comfortably at home instead of a small screen backstage. This makes it possible for actors and audiences to participate in different places and at different times around the world. And this will also bring a new sensational experience to actors and audiences. This special performance that attracted worldwide attention has redefined the modes of performances, allowing the audience to rethink this difference between the viewing experience and traditional theater. It also allows actors to rethink the uniqueness of performance in private and public spaces. And actually, it makes the creators consider reconfiguration of three-dimensional space and time. So most theaters were shut down, and the theater as a place for a group gathering, public activities, has become a sensitive sign to reflect the change of specific social policies.
I thought the online served as a lesson for all of us that creativity is endless and nobody can really tell an artist when to stop, because when you are challenged by a particular circumstance or a situation, the artist is like a water. It would find ways to get out, back to the stream and then to the ocean. I thought that's what the artists in the pandemic is or was. And now we're back to the face-to-face. I think what's good about the online was it's a good event for us to revisit the process and compare it again to what we have now. And I thought also that the process or the processes also define the artist.
Pulitzer and Hearst, they think we're nothing. Are we nothing? No! Pulitzer and Hearst, they think they got us. Do they got us? No! Even though we ain't got hats or badges, we're a union just by saying so. And the world will know. What's it gonna take to stop the wagons? Are we ready? Yeah! What's it gonna take to stop this cabbers? Can we do it? Yeah! We'll do what we gotta do until we break the will of mighty Bill and Joe. And the world will know, and the journal too. Mr. Hertz and Pulitzer, have we got news for you? See, the world won't know what they're gonna pay. Instead of walking headlines, we'll be making them today. And the ranks will grow, and we'll kick their rear, and the world will know that we've been here. When the circulation bell starts ringing, will we hear it? No! What if the Delances come out swinging? Will we hear it?
No! When you got 100 voices singing, who can hear a lousy whistle blow? And the world will know that this ain't no game, and we got a ton of rotten fruit and perfect pain. So they give their word when it ain't worth beans. Now we're gonna see what stop the presses really means. And the old will weep and go back to sleep, and we got no choice but to see it through.
And we found our voice.
And the world will.
Bullets may own the world, but he don't own us. Bullets may crack the whip, but he won't whip us.
And the world will know we've been keeping score. And the day is us, alright, so we can tell a war. We've been down too long, and we pay our dues.
And the things we do today will be tomorrow's news.
And the die is cast, and the torch is passed, and the roar will rise from the streets below, and grow, and so the world will feel the fire and finally know. Bullets may own the world, but you don't own us.
Bullets may own the world, but he don't own us.
Crack the whip, but he won't whip
Bullets may crack the whip, but he won't whip us.
So the world says no, but the kids do too. Try to walk all over us, we'll stomp all over you.
Can they kick us out? Take away our vote?
Who will let them stuff this crock of garbage down our throat? No! Every day you